Good afternoon. This is Luigi Spence West, and you're watching 55 Action News. And I got my little news table with me, and it's time for the top stories today. All right. So, without further ado, um, all right. Right, and here are our top headlines for today. This story comes from ABC News and says most Americans approve of Supreme Court decision restricting use of race in college admissions. And I believe ABC held a poll for it. And sorry about that. It's a little hot in the studio today, if you can't already tell. Right, right. A majority of Americans approve of the Supreme Court ruling restricting the use of race as a factor in college admissions. Though the country is more divided on other high profile rulings and increasingly viewing the court system as driven more by politics than the law. According to a new ABC News slash Ipsos poll conducted using Ipsos Knowledge Panel. On Thursday, mm, looks like they're going to have to charge um, the computer later on. I'll get to that. All right, stand by. It appears we have some technical um difficulties. We'll get this sorted out in a moment. In the meantime, please stand by. We'll return in just a moment. All right, seems we have the fault all sorted out, and we can now safely continue with our news. All right, now continuing on. On Thursday, the Supreme Court set new limits on affirmative action programs in cases involving whether public and private colleges and universities can continue to use race as one factor among many on student admissions. A little more than half of Americans, 52%, approve of the U.S. Supreme Court decision on restricting the use of race as a factor in college admissions, while 32% disapprove and 16% saying they don't know. A majority of Republicans, 75%, and Independents, 58%, approve of the ruling, while a district minority of Democrats approve, 26%. And there are deep divisions between racial groups. Most white people, 60%, and Asian people, 58%, approve of the. Stand by. Alright. Hopefully the fault should be fixed by now. Alright. Continuing on. And there are deep divisions between racial groups. Most white people, 60%, and Asian people, 58%, approve of the Supreme Court's decision to limit the use of race in college admissions, while only 25% of black people support the decision. Hispanic people are split with 40% approving and 40% disapproving. Still, despite most Americans supporting the decision to end affirmative action in universities, Americans are less likely to think that Black and Hispanic students have a fair chance of getting into the college of their choice compared to their white and Asian student counterparts. About two-thirds of Americans say that white and Asian students have a fair chance compared to only 47% who say this about black students and 50% for Hispanic students. As the Supreme Court has ended its term and is on break for the summer, a majority of Americans, 53%, believe that the nation's highest court rules mainly on the basis of their partisan political view rather on the basis of the law, 33%, while 14% say they don't know. A majority of Democrats, 76%, and independents, 51%, believe that the Supreme Court rules mainly on the basis of their partisan political view, a significant difference from the 36% of the Republicans who believe that the court makes rulings based on their political views. These margins have shifted from a January 2022 ABC News slash Ipsos poll, where 38% of Americans believe that the justices rule mainly on the basis of the law versus 43% who believe that the court rules on the basis of their political views. The same week the Supreme Court effectively ended affirmative action in college admissions, the High Court also struck down President Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness program, which would have aimed to forgive student loan debt for more than 43 million American borrowers. In the ABC News / Ipsos poll, 45% of Americans support the Supreme Court's decision to strike down Biden's student loan forgiveness plan, while 40% disapproved the decision. Broken down by party, only 17% of Democrats supported the Supreme Court decision, compared to 71% of Republicans and 49% of independents. Views on this decision also vary by age, with older Americans more likely to approve. 61% of those 65 and older approved of the decision, compared to 50% of 50 to 64-year-olds, 40% of 30 to 49-year-olds, and 31% of those under 20. Quote, I know there are millions of Americans in this country who feel disappointed and discouraged, or even a little bit angry about the court's decision today on student debt. And I must admit, I do too. Biden said, unquote. Biden said on Friday following the decision. Despite the Supreme Court's ruling against Biden's debt forgiveness plan, the president told that the American people on Friday um, that he is not giving up on providing relief to borrowers pursuing debt forgiveness through the Higher Education Act. According to the White House, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona has initiated the rulemaking process on this new attempt at debt relief, but it's unclear who would get relief or how much, as well as whether it will withstand any legal challenges. Another landmark decision, which was another landmark decision, was handed down this week by the Supreme Court, which ruled for an evangelical Christian website designer in a case involving whether creative businesses can refuse to serve LGBTQ plus customers, citing free speech under the First Amendment. In the new ABC/Ipsos poll, there is a near even split on this decision, with 43% of Americans approving the decision and 42% disapproving, and another 14% saying, I don't know. Again, depending on how they identify politically, there was a large gap between how people viewed the opinion. Only 15% of Democrats approved the decision compared to 68% of Republicans and 49% of independents. In addition, those under 50, black people and women were less likely to approve of this decision. And that's what's going on around the country. And that's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods. This story is coming from My Central Jersey, and it's titled "The Central New Jersey, where Washington first celebrated the 4th of July, is getting a revamp." And this story comes straight from Piscataway. Every day will be the 4th of July at the Metlar Bodine House Museum, thanks to a $500,000 federal grant. The grant, announced Thursday by Representative Frank Pallone, D District 6, will help complete an extensive restoration of the museum, including construction of the Forever the Fort Gallery, featuring the Ross Hall Wall. Quote, "This event is New Jersey's best kept secret," said Julian Sedlowski, sorry if I butchered that name, executive director of the Metlar Bodine House Museum, who joined Pallone, Mayor Brian Waller, township council members, and others at a press conference at the museum at 1281 River Road. Ross Hall served as headquarters for General George Washington and the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. It's where Washington wrote the first order in 1778 for the United States Army to celebrate the 4th of July. The troops were ordered to march across the Raritan River on Landing Lane Bridge, line the banks of the river in New Brunswick, and shoot their rifles in the fort's organized salute to the nation's independence. That evening, Washington held a party at Ross Hall for officers including Alexander Hamilton, Marquis de Lafayette, and Baron von Steuben. The Roswell Hall is the only part of the original building that exists today. The wall has been recognized as an American treasure by the National Park Service, and the museum is also listed on the state and national registers of historic sites and highlights of the rich history of Middlesex County through a collection of local memorabilia and architecture. Quote, "I wanted to come here because it's July 4th, and I think, as you all know, this was the place where Washington announced that July 4th will be henceforth celebrated as the nation's Independence Day," Pallone said. Palone spoke about New Jersey being the crossroads of so many Revolutionary War battles, but many people are not aware of that history. The Forever the Fourth Gallery, featuring the Hall Wall, will be housed in the new education wing in the museum, Shedlowski said. Palone said the Roswell Hall, will educate the community not only about the revolution, but on the 4th of July, but also Piscataway and Central Jersey. Quote, as we prepare to celebrate Independence Day, I'm proud that the Metlar Bodine House Museum will receive federal funding to help complete construction of the new Forever the Fourth educational wing. Palone said, New Jersey holds an important place in the founding of our country. It's more critical now than ever to preserve our state's connection to the past as we count down to the 250th anniversary of our independence in 2026. We're lucky to have a museum right here in Middlesex County so that future generations can continue to learn about New Jersey's important role in our country's fight to independence. At the press conference, Shadlowski presented a history of the wall. At the end, at the end of July 1777, Congress decided that Independence Day would be celebrated July 4th, she said. Quote, that's the first national holiday, she said. The following year, Washington and his troops marched to Middlesex County after the successful Battle of Monmouth. Washington had his headquarters at Ross Hall about a quarter mile up the road, she said. That's where he wrote the order on July 3rd, 1778 to celebrate the holiday. Quote, it was the first time that the 4th of July was officially Independence Day, and it happened right here in Piscataway and New Brunswick along the river, and it's the most phenomenal thing, unquote, she said. Quote, when you see the wall, when it comes back, I know that you're going to absolutely feel its presence. It's the only physical link to this incredible event. Quote, unquote. Quote, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece of colonial architecture, she said. Quote, the township of Piscataway and the fellowship for Metlar House have been waiting 22 years to give this Revolutionary War relic a home, Shedlowski said. The funding Congressman Palone has to help to secure will soon make this a reality. Some have said that the Ross Hall Wall is just as historically significant as Liberty Bell. These funds will make this happen. Museum volunteers, staff, and members of the fellowship are overjoyed and thankful for Congressman Palone's efforts. And that's what's happening around you and your world. Stay tuned for the weather. Uh, Hold on. Stay tuned for the weather.
Showers, then isolated teens storm low of 55. Los Angeles sunny with high 82 and low of 62. Miami chance T-storms and T-storms likely with high of 81. Mini funny.
All right, we're just gonna skip the weather for right now because we don't have much time for this. So the weather just wasn't working today. So, all right, coming up next, a brand new game show coming up next on NBC, called Beans and More Beans, and that'll be coming on at 5 o'clock, and then and then at 6 or I think 7, it's the NBC Sports Showdown. That's coming up next. And yeah, that's the news for this week. I'm Elise Miss Bush, and this broadcast will be going out on July the 6th. So I'm Elise Miss Bush, and I'll see you then, and have a happy 4th of July.